Yeah, right?
With hands and feet he ever drove the earth upwards to no avail.
The Myth of Sisyphus by Eliot M. Simon. In the lifelong quest to establish a transcendent significance for our personal aspirations and achievements, it is inevitable that we find ourselves overwhelmed by a profound sense of disappointment. The potentialities for the perfectibility of human nature and our laborious accomplishments, inspired by intellectual empowerment, moral fortitude, and altruistic ambitions, appear perpetually diminished by our inherent inadequacies or the external vicissitudes of contrary experiences. Is this perceived disappointment an objective assessment of a life governed by idealistic goals impossible to achieve? Or is it a subjective realization of the degree to which human excellence can be manifest in the world fails to satisfy our aspirations? The common element in life's disappointments is that the measure of human excellence is based on the idealization of achievement. In the quest for human perfectibility, intellectual, moral, and physical achievements aspire to a state of absolute perfection attributed to divine powers that are immutable. However, authentic human achievement must be differentiated from the divine through the realization of its more limited qualities. Achievement stands as an ephemeral condition for the aspirant's spirit of invention, since the significance of such good works in one particular time and place is reevaluated by others, often to its ultimate detriment. In order to overcome the inevitable frustration of failed aspirations and the feelings of despair that one's labors merely constitute the duration of meaningless endeavors, the quest for human perfectibility must idealize the process through which human beings aspire to a transcendent individual and social excellence without the consolation of achievement. The myth of Sisyphus offers one of the most poignant insights into the human quest for perfectibility. Sisyphus rebelled against the gods. He aspired to break down the differentiation between the divine and the human, and attempted to share their creative powers. Paradoxically, he was punished and blessed with the task of pushing a rock up a mountain in Tartarus, only to have it roll back before he could reach the summit. But he was empowered by the god with the superior strength and fortitude to repeat this cycle forever. Sisyphus challenged the ambiguous morality of the gods and attempted to assert his own intellectual and moral excellence. In both his ascending aspiration and descending frustration, it is the triumph of his will to re-engage his rivalry and sustain his faith in his potentiality to reach that elusive summit. His idealism transforms the divine command to sever endless labor into a perpetual exercise of his free will to aspire to a state of perfectibility, in which his rebellion and subordination are united. Sisyphus must internalize the will of Zeus to aspire to a transcendent excellence, but he must also discipline his will to accept his limitations. Using his intellectual vision and willpower, he re-engages his burden in the cyclical process of human perfectibility without the consolation of achievement. Although conscious of his creative imperfections, he also feels a profound likeness to the immortal willfulness of the divine in nature. As Sisyphus nears the summit, he feels the full force of his will and the weighty counter will of the rock burden as it rolls down to the bottom of the mountain. He realizes that the significance of his negative achievement is based on the necessity to realize greater aspirations, rather than fall into the paralysis of self-criticism, guilt, and despair. He must follow the rock down the bottom of the mountain, and at this lowest stage of his quest, he experiences the highest stage of his heroic development. He re-engages the rock, and thereby substantiates his faith in the eternal potentiality of human perfectibility. He experiences his ideal self, not as the triumph of his will over the counter will of the gods, but as the synthesis of these two contending wills in the cycles of his labor. Aspiration and frustration nurture each other in a laborious process of becoming. The myth of Sisyphus emphasizes this. It also undercuts the value of such achievement by reconfiguring the potentiality of human perfectibility as a cyclical process of infinite possibilities. Although Sisyphus is constantly in motion, his progress to achieve his goal is static. His labor synthesizes past and future, and ends in an eternal horizon of becoming. Beyond desire and self-aggregating power is death, and beyond death lies the transformation of the human into the eternal entity of the universe. Focusing on the ascent of Sisyphus with his rock, we see him as the aspiring human being. Focusing on the descent, we see him suffering the defeat of those human aspirations. But if we examine both aspects of his cyclical labor, we see Sisyphus experiencing the greater wholeness of human existence. Wholeness not as a finished form, but as a process that holds together the dynamic tensions of all contrary powers. All trials and tribulations, successes and failures, aspirations and frustrations, all the contrary aspects of human nature and lived circumstances are united in his inspired labor. By making his repetitive ascent and descent with heroic fortitude, Sisyphus exemplified the enlightened consciousness of his true ontological condition. Sisyphus also symbolizes a ritual of regeneration by returning the primordial creation and destruction. Human existence is monstrous, a vast morphology of evil akin to the Gnostics' catastrophe and the Judeo-Christian concept of the fall. Sisyphus' regression into that primordial chaos associated with the bottom of the mountain was his punishment for competing with the hierarchical of the gods. But the punishment was for Sisyphus and regenerate himself through his labor with the rock tree, aspiring again to that condition of perfectibility associated with the sun. In the eternal present of his sacred quest, Sisyphus escapes history, sin, and human limitation, transforming human existence into an eternal process of becoming. The gods of Homer and the Greek tragedians serve as an aspiration for human beings to achieve greater excellence, but punish them for their human. They ejected quarrels between men that resulted in brave men being killed. They enjoyed human triumph and happiness, as well as ultimate failures and despair. The gods punished both for their crimes and for the crimes of their exalted ancestors. This universal evil in human nature was attributed to the human aspiration to break down the disjunction between human excellence and divine perfection, which justified the anger of the gods, who refashioned their envy into a rational demonstration of their superior power. In myth, human evil is not a question of moral right or wrong. It is based on whether or not human beings obey the gods' commandment to stay within the limits of the aspiration for perfectibility is inspired by his need to assert his moral order in existence. Human invention. The oracle at Delphi could reveal human Homer and Hesiod portrayed the behavior of the gods as morally shameful, but they neither associated that immorality with the divine essence of the gods, nor justify it as a higher and more mysterious standard of goodness. The only means who do not share the divine essence or power to assert their self-aggrandizing capability is one position of moral system, which is the good terms. However, the Greek epic poets, traditions, and philosophers could not define precisely the relationship between the divine qualities of the good and the human qualities of goodness beyond their rational similitudes. The assertion of a moral system upon nature and society can be seen as a rebellion against the unreality of the gods and the monstrous world as it is. It reflects the human desire to control the natural order in terms of positive qualities of human nature, idealized as it should.